Picture this. It's the spring of 1943 in Huelva, a sun-drenched town on the coast of Spain. There's a full military funeral going on. Spanish naval officers, civil authorities, they're all there paying their respects. And in the casket, a British officer, Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. But here's the crazy part. The man they're all burying, Major Martin, he's a ghost. He never took a single breath, never signed his name, never even existed. And yet, this complete fabrication in death would go on to complete a mission that saved thousands of Allied lives and literally changed the course of the Second World War. So today, we are diving deep into Operation Mincemeat. And this is, without a doubt, one of the most brilliant, most detailed, and, let's be honest, one of the most bizarre deception operations in all of military history. Let's get into how they pulled this incredible thing off. Okay, so to really get the genius of this plan, you have to put yourself back in early 1943. The Allies have just secured North Africa. So everybody, including the enemy, knows what's coming next, an invasion of Europe, right across the Mediterranean. The only question was, where? And really, when you looked at a map, there was only one truly logical answer: Sicily. Taking Sicily was absolutely crucial to opening up the Mediterranean sea lanes for Allied ships. I mean, it was so obvious that the German High Command had already pegged it as the #1 most likely spot for the Allied invasion. And this, right here, was the massive problem for Allied intelligence. Think about it. It's not enough to just confuse the Germans. You have to convince the Germans that their own perfectly sound strategic thinking is actually a mistake. You have to make them believe a complete lie over the obvious truth that's staring them right in the face. How do you even do that? Well, the idea that bubbled up was as gruesome as it was brilliant. It all started with this memo warning officers not to carry secret documents on planes. But two intelligence officers, Ewan Montague and Charles Cholmondeley, they flipped that idea completely on its head. They thought, wait a minute, what if a body was found after a plane crash, carrying the exact documents we want the enemy to find? So that brings us to the first and maybe the biggest hurdle. They needed a body, and not just any body. It had to be someone whose cause of death could pass a medical exam as a victim of a plane crash at sea. Someone who looked like they died from drowning or exposure, not from, some kind of major injury. So they went to the top, to the legendary pathologist Sir Bernard Spilsbury. And he gave them the key. He explained that if they used the body of a man who died of pneumonia, the fluid in his lungs would look almost exactly like seawater to a provincial Spanish doctor, especially a doctor who's already expecting to find a drowning victim. It was the perfect pathological cover story. Okay, body secured. Now they had to build a man. They named Captain, acting as Major, William Martin. The rank was just right, senior enough to be carrying secret letters, but not so high up that you'd wonder why he was on this plane. And making him a Royal Marine, that was just bureaucratic genius. See, if he was an army officer, word of his death would spread everywhere, risking a leak. But the Marines were under the Navy, which meant they could keep all knowledge of Major Martin locked down to a tiny, trusted circle. Now, this is where the real psychological mastery comes in. The team knew that perfection is suspicious. A flawless super spy would just feel fake. But a real person, real people are messy. So they filled his pockets with the stuff of a real life. Passionate love letters, a bill for an engagement ring, a ticked-off letter from his dad about his finances, and even an overdraft notice from his bank. This wasn't some perfect hero. He was a human being with problems just like anyone else. And the attention to detail was just obsessive. I mean, take his ID card. It wasn't brand new. One of the planners literally spent his spare time rubbing the card on his trousers to give it that worn, carried in a wallet every day kind of look. They even made a note that this was a replacement for an ID he'd lost, just another little touch of believable human error. Every single detail was a tiny hook, designed to be swallowed whole by German intelligence. And now we get to the payload. All of this incredible work building a fictional man served just one purpose: to make the Germans believe the documents that were tucked away in Major Martin's briefcase. This was the whole ballgame. The documents laid out a completely phony Allied strategy. They described not one, but two separate invasions, one hitting Sardinia and another hitting Greece. And here's a brilliant little twist. They took the real code name for the Sicily invasion, Husky, and slapped it onto the fake invasion of Greece. That way, any real intelligence leaks the Germans picked up about Husky would just make them believe the fake plan even more. This line right here from the main letter, this was the checkmate move. It flat out says that Sicily is just a cover target for the real invasion of Sardinia. What does that mean? It means that when the Germans inevitably heard real chatter about an invasion of Sicily, which they were bound to, they'd just nod and say, "Ah, yes, the deception plan we already know about." It was a lie that reinforced itself. And to really sell the whole Sardinia angle, they didn't just use dry military orders. They slipped in this casual, throwaway joke in a personal letter from Lord Mountbatten. The thinking was, why on earth would a forger include a cheesy pun about the target? It's too informal, too human. And that's exactly why it was so believable. It was the detail that German intelligence absolutely seized on to confirm Sardinia was the real prize. So on April 30th, 1943, the body of Major Martin, packed in dry ice, was gently slid into the sea from the submarine HMS Seraph. They chose a spot off the coast of Huelva, Spain, for one very specific reason. It was crawling with active, well-connected German agents. The trap was officially set. And the plan worked faster and better than anyone could have dreamed. The body was found, and just as they predicted, the pro-German Spanish officials kind of dragged their feet on returning the briefcase to the British. That gave the German agent there just enough time to get his hands on the documents, steam them open, photograph everything, and zip that intel straight to Berlin. And what was the German conclusion? Total success. They didn't just buy it, they issued a formal report declaring the documents were above suspicion. They thought they'd hit the jackpot, that they'd scored an epoch-making triumph, and been handed the entire Allied invasion plan on a silver platter. And here's the thing. The Germans' own desire to believe it was real became the operation's greatest weapon. They actively ignored clues that should have blown the whole thing wide open. For example, the planners worried the chain attaching the briefcase looked phony. But the Germans misreported it. They said the case was clutched in the hand of the corpse, which was just a better story. They even ignored autopsy evidence that didn't fit the timeline, all because the documents just seemed too good to be true. And this deception, it went all the way to the top. Adolf Hitler himself was personally convinced. He actually rejected Mussolini, who, ironically, argued correctly that Sicily had to be the real target. But no, Hitler trusted the documents found on the man who never was. The results were huge, and they were immediate. The elite 1st Panzer Division was rerouted all the way from France to Greece to fight an invasion that was never coming. Warships were moved away from Sicily. Even the defenses on Sicily were shifted to the wrong side of the island to face the fake threat from Sardinia. And then, on July 10th, 1943, the real invasion, Operation Husky, began. The Allies landed in Sicily, and because of all those German redeployments, they faced far, far less resistance than anyone had expected. And so, a completely fictional man, created with obsessive detail and a deep, deep understanding of human psychology, succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Major William Martin, the man who never was, became one of the greatest, albeit strangest, heroes of the war. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. In our world today, a world of digital deepfakes and constant online disinformation, could a plan like this even work? Or has the art of the physical, human deception, the crumpled ticket stub, the overdraft notice, been lost forever? It's something to think about.